Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Pei Chen, and I'm a research assistant at the ASEAN Center for Energy. In collaboration with Global Power System Transformation G-PST Pillar 2, ASEAN Center for Energy has organized today's webinar as part of G-PST Community of Practice program with topic Learning from Vietnam's Experience on High Fluctuations of Variable Renewable Energy in the Grid System. In today's session, we will feature experts from the Australian Energy Market Operator, Electricity of Vietnam National Load Dispatch Centre, PRN and Grid System Operator from Tenaga, National Berhad. A little background on G-PST and today's Community of Practice knowledge sharing session. G-PST is actively engaged in the implementation of power system operators' technical work, as well as coordinating specific pillars to identify common cutting-edge research questions that can inform large-scale national research and development investments. G-PST consortium collaborates with HAPUA Working Group Number 2, whose members are system operators focused on the distribution and power reliability and quality. Today's discussion will surround the current power sector landscape in the ASEAN region, namely Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. A few housekeeping issues before we get into the presentations and the panel discussion. This session will be recorded, so if you are attending or have registered, do look out for that. There will also be a moderated Q&A, so please submit any questions that you have throughout the presentation and discussion, and we'll try to address as many of those as we can get at the end of the session. This is all for housekeeping. I will now pass the mic over to Ms. Karen Watzek, Secretariat Director at G-PST, followed by Mr. Warit Ratanatran, representative of HAPUA Working Group 2, to provide the welcome remarks and opening statements for us today. Ms. Karen Watzek, please.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Ms. Peijan. Thanks to everybody for joining us today in this Southeast Asia Power System Operators Community of Practice discussion. We're really excited to welcome participants, not just from around the region, but we know there's people on from around the world. And we're excited to have a chance to hear from experts locally, specifically from the power system operators in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and in Australia, regarding their experiences introducing high volumes of wind and solar energy into the power system. As mentioned, my name is Karen Watzek, and I have the privilege of directing the Secretariat for the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, or G-PST. Many of you work with us, or you may be familiar with our work. And as a reminder, all of our work is focused on delivering technical solutions to power system operators and supporting their success in navigating the energy transition. We're a consortium of power system operators all over the world working together to ensure that our electrical systems maintain their affordability and reliability as we're bringing on higher and higher volumes of renewable energy. And overcoming some of the challenges associated with these high volumes of variable renewable energy is the subject of this conversation today. By bringing together experts from different power system operators who have challenges in common, we can foster knowledge sharing and the development of technical partnerships that support problem solving well beyond the scope of one conversation. That's the fundamental goal of a community of practice, and we're really excited that the ASEAN Center for Energy and HAPUA will be working together on a power system operator community of practice over the next year after this kickoff event today. In addition to communities of practice, G-PST supports power system transformation with our partners around the world through direct technical collaborations between system operators and research institutes. We also support workforce development through our work developing targeted, cutting-edge technical curriculum modules, because we know there's a shortage of highly technical staff at every power system in the world right now. Related to this effort, we have a number of initiatives to support greater inclusion and advancement of women in the power sector, and we're expanding our programming in internships, fellowships, and short-term technical exchanges for rapid hands-on learning in specific topics. G-PST and partners are working to develop and deploy open source tools for power system planning and operation in order to accelerate operational advancements through transparency and cost efficiency. We also support local adoption of standards and grid codes to maximize the benefits that can be captured from emerging technologies as all of our power systems are evolving. All these work streams that I've mentioned are related, and we have a large number of ongoing and upcoming projects within and across these topics. We also partner with related initiatives around the world because we recognize that this is a busy space, and we want to ensure that we focus our efforts on the unique value that we deliver to power system operators. If you're already working with us, we're very grateful for your participation. And if you aren't and you're interested, feel free to go to our website at globalpst.org and click Get Involved to let us know how you'd like to collaborate with us. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Ms. Watsek. I will now hand it over to Mr. Warit Ratanachan, representative of HAPUA Working Group 2, to continue the opening statements for today. Mr. Warit, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Is it undeniable that we are now in the transition era with the rapid change? Every country set the target of the net zero emission, and renewable are becoming increasingly their role in the power grid system. The energy management system are aiming to allow the better optimization of the grid, and the new technology are introduced for providing new options to ensure grid flexibility and stability. As the transition continues, the emerging potential of renewable in ASEAN also provide us the mutual opportunity, start from the knowledge sharing like today, and to utilize the abundant resource by ensuring our regional grid interconnection or ASEAN power grid around the development in grid modernization. Realizing on the future of low emission power system, our contribution would help this clean and green transition start from knowledge sharing like today. I strongly believe that together we can move toward the sustainability and driving our regional target under the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation on low emission power system. I look forward to this meeting to provide knowledge sharing among the system operators who facing challenge in integration renewables to the power grid. I hope that this meeting would be productive for the parties to strengthen the association among ASEAN countries for our mutual benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warit. Before I proceed to introduce everyone here, could we have all the speakers to turn on the video for a group picture? And can I invite the ACE ICT team to help us take a group picture?
Okay, everyone, I'm going to take the group picture, so please turn on your camera. Okay, I'm going to take the picture in 3, 2, 1. Smile, everyone. Okay, once more in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me now invite Mr. Akbar Dwi Wahyono to start off the first presentation on the ASEAN power sector planning and its key challenges. Akbar is a technical officer of the Power, Fossil Fuel, Alternative Energy and Storage Department at the ASEAN Center for Energy. Mr. Akbar, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Faye. Could you turn on my slide? Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation will give the first scene setting for today's discussion, particularly giving the context of ASEAN power sector planning, particularly related to the variable renewable energy. Next slide, please. Okay, based on our renewable energy resource assessment, ASEAN actually has more solar and wind potential to be utilized beyond ASEAN member state power development plan, with around 8 terawatt of solar technical potential and 350 gigawatt of wind energy resource. And our flagship study, the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Study, or we call it the AIMS3, set out the study of the ASEAN Interconnection Project by also consolidating the variable renewable energy potential for each the ASEAN member state into the ASEAN Interconnection Project. Next slide, please. And in our study, the AIMS3, we explore 4 scenarios to see how each of the scenario benefit the ASEAN member state in terms of the energy transition, social impact, and as well as the economic benefits. We see that in 2025, under the ASEAN RE target scenario, in order to accommodate around 95 gigawatt of solar and wind capacity, we estimate it will require around 15 gigawatt of the ASEAN interconnection capacity project within the region, with investment around estimation around 55.1 billion US dollar. And in the longer term, with the same scenario by 2040, we estimate that around 125 gigawatt of solar and wind capacity will be coming in online in the region, and it will require around 24 gigawatt of the interconnection capacity, with total build cost estimation around 211.9 billion US dollar. And if we look out at the different scenario, we see the more ambitious scenario of the high RE scenario with the VRE share around 25 until 30% in the energy mix. By 2040, it's projected around 504 gigawatt of solar and wind capacity will be possible to be installed in the region with the interconnection capacity around 104 gigawatt will provide the flexibility resources to mitigate this variability coming from the solar and wind capacity. And with this scenario, it will require the investment total of investment around 247.6 billion US dollar for its build cost. Next slide, please. And with this increasing penetration of grid-connected solar and wind in the Southeast Asia, whether it be in short term or longer term, and we notice that the intermittent nature due to the uncertainty of the resource, whether it be the weather or the forecast that did not really come in time, then, and the variability as well as the location still become a main challenge for grid operators when they need to balance the electricity generation with the demand, while also in order to maintain the power system reliability with the lowest possible cost that they need to have. And today, this could be the discussion topic for us. We will discuss the key challenge or issue in the integrating of the VRE, and we also will come up with some of the potential solutions for the Southeast Asia system operators by taking lesson learned from the EVN NLDC. With us today, we will have the panelists from the EVN NLDC itself. We will have expert from the PLN and expert from the grid system operators, as well as the expert from the IMO. The panel discussion later will also be moderated by manager of the ASEAN Center for Energy. Next slide, please. That's all. Conclude my presentation. Back to you, Ms. Pei.
Thank you, Mr. Angba. We will now hear from Mr. Din Shenduk on takeaways from handling the volatility of solar energy in Vietnam. Mr. Din is currently Manager of Power System Analysis and Planning Department at the National Load Dispatch Center from Electricity of Vietnam Group. Mr. Din, please.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me share the screen first. Oh, just wait a minute. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yep. Just okay. So on behalf of the National Load Dispatch Center for the EVN, Electricity of Vietnam, so today is a great honor for me to present and share some. I think that's just a small some experience we're facing now, and we do hope that based on this forum we can discuss further about the point we raised from the Vietnamese power system point of view. Our slide will mainly focus on the two parts. For the first part, we will take you a quick glance on the current configuration of the Vietnamese power system and some draft orientation for the next 10 years. As you can see, apart from the COVID pandemic effect, we still got the high growth rate in terms of the energy demand and also in terms of the peak demand. And up to now, we have already got around 4.5% in terms of the energy production and around 4.4% in terms of the peak demand. And also at the present, we almost reaching 45 gigawatt in terms of the load demand. And we foreseen to the next 10 years, we will reaching 86 gigawatt in 2030 and 155 gigawatt in 2045. And in parallel, we also got the high volume from the energy production, especially in 2030, we will hit the almost 500 terawatt hour. And in 2045, it is reaching 977 terawatt hour. And in terms of the generation mix, we can see that the gradual reduction in terms of the coal-fired and the hydro as well, due to the fact that we have already made use of the hydro resource. And based on the COP26, the Vietnamese government have the strong engagement into the renewable energy development. We can see the high share increasingly from now up to the next 10 years, from 5% in terms of the wind and 21% in terms of the solar, can be reaching the target of the 30% for wind and 26% for solar up to 2045. And in parallel, we also concentrate on the flexible generation. And but suppose that the ratio is gradually increased to offset the uncertainty from the renewable energy. And we do hope that we can reach around 9% up to 2045. Currently now, we have already got for the generation portfolio in terms of the solar, with the figure around 8,700 megawatt. And for the rooftop, it is say the same number with almost 766 megawatt. And for wind, up to now, we almost reaching 4,000 megawatt. All of this achievement thanks to the FEED mechanism for solar, for rooftop, and for wind as well. But up to now, we have already expired the FEED incentive. It is what exactly we fill up the load profile daily. We base on the thermal and hydro for the base load, and the natural gas would be the middle to meet the demand, and the peak saving is relied on the solar in terms of the farm and the rooftop as well, and the wind. And a small portion of the flexible generation is come from the hydro, and some fast start like a gas turbine, just small portion to offset the intermittent of the renewable energy up to now. The second part of my presentation slide will mainly focus on what exactly the challenges we're facing now. Here is quite typical for the other country, for the other power system facing with the high penetration from the renewable energy. Up to now, for the grid concessions, we also have a lot of the obstacle to evacuate all the power. Mainly we are suffering the local concession, and to some instant during a day, the backbone 500 kV still got the concession as well. The other issue, it can be present in the next couple slides when focus on the initial, the renewable energy forecast, and the other supporting mechanism offer from EVN and NLDC. Let's see for the system initial. Here is what exactly we record during a big festival that we have a low demand. The above, it is what exactly we record the frequency fluctuation, and the below, the curve below, it is mainly dedicated into the system initial we are monitoring online, and we can see the correlation when we reaching the threshold of the minimum initial. So we, in our system, occur the Y fluctuate for the frequency. That proves that if you cannot maintain the minimum initial for the whole system, the system frequency can be widely fluctuate. That's the point we would to mention about the high effect of the renewable energy, because during the big festival, the load demand is very low, and the share of the renewable energy is very high. Last year, we have already reaching around 55% of the total peak demand is met by the renewable energy. It's really the challenge figure we facing now. And from NLDC, we also have the solution for the system initial monitoring. Is what exactly the added value application we can extract from the initial monitoring online. We can, based on static data we collect from the history, we build up the correlation between the initial amount with the frequency can be deep in the case we lost of the biggest number of the megawatt in our system. So you can see on the right hand side, it is what exactly the P loss here, and the frequency mean, that mean we can forecasting if we lost 300, 600 or 1200, we can foresee or forecast the frequency minimum we can deep, and based on that we can have the suffering warning for the operator about the load shedding potentially can be happen. Here's what exactly the added value application we extract from the initial monitoring online. Next one related to the forecasting error is quite typical for many power system with a high penetration from renewable energy. And now we also learn from the other developed country like German, Denmark. We collect from two global supplier the data for forecasting, and we also build up in the own way the solution for forecasting, and then based on the forecasting from the individual power plant of the renewable energy, we combine and we put the weight factor for each source of the forecasting, and then we come up with the final forecasting for the system. And the other enhancement to reduce the forecasting error, we rely on the AGC, the automatic generation control. So we will put the final result of the forecasting into the AGC, and AGC will based on the forecasting of each individual power plant. They can send the set point signal control to each power plant to make sure that we cannot exceed the threshold of the transmission capacity limit. And now to enhance further the solution for the forecasting, we also have the comprehensive view to focus on that. We now to keep investing into the infrastructure, like work with the supplier of the data for forecasting and try to reinforce to comply with the error maximum we cannot exceed. And we also work on the grid reinforcement in terms of the requirement. We put the responsibility for the individual power plant to take the responsibility to maintain the minimum forecasting for the renewable energy output. Otherwise, they can have a suffering the certain penalty on the amount they forecast and suffering the big error. And the other uncertainty and intermittent of the renewable energy also got the result in terms of the fifth frequency response reserve. So with a certain amount of the renewable energy, they can absorb the higher amount. They have to pay attention on the frequency reserve. And based on that, you can see on the table, when the higher number of the renewable energy capacity increase, we need to put more reserve on the secondary frequency reserve from 950 up to 1,700. And it's also the role of the flexible generation. You can see we have the data statistic of the number start and stop from the conventional power plant, especially for the natural gas turbine. you can see from 2019 up to 2021, with a significant increase in terms of the number start and stop. So they can incur a lot of the cost for the conventional power plant. That's why it is one indicator to show it up that we need a certain portfolio of the flexible generation in the future. And up to now, in fact, from NLDC, we also put a lot of the requirement for the grid code to require not only for the conventional power plant participate into the primary and the secondary frequency control. We also reclaim the contribution from the renewable energy for the primary frequency control, especially for the solar. In the case of the higher frequency, they have to reduce the output. And we also put the same regulation for the wind. And the other infrastructure we now has been relying on, it is the phone recorder and the PMU. And based on that, we can have the suffering data to run the WAM application for the control monitoring and also for the power quality observation. Up to now, we actively use the phone recorder and the PMU for monitoring the phone ride-through performance of each individual renewable energy power plant. And we also require the certain setting for the FRT phone recorder phone ride-through for each individual power plant to make sure that in the terms of the phone occur in our system, all the renewable energy have to participate and contribute in terms of the megawatt and also in terms of the reactive power contribute to the grid. And in the case if we suffering the high cascading fall, we have to rely on the special scheme protection. It's also got the signal from the PMU we install on the 500 and 220 backbone system. And in the case of the extreme condition, we have to rely on the load setting. Yeah, and here's some main key point for our further discussion, and to hold that they can have some point from your side to discuss further about this. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Din, for your sharing on Vietnam's experience in high frequency fluctuation in the grid. Before we get into the panel discussion, reminder to feel free to write in any questions that you have in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the panel. We will now have the panel discussion comprising of Mr. Din Xuan Duc, Mr. Alvanto Yanua Iksan, Mr. Shanmugam Topalan, and Mr. Luke Robinson on the panel, with Mr. Benny Suryadi leading and moderating the discussion. Mr. Benny has 14+ years experience in managing programs and conducting research on energy and climate change, and this includes supporting governments of the 10 ASEAN member states to build climate-friendly development of the energy sector. He currently leads energy partnerships with several countries and international development agencies. I will now pass the time to Mr. Benny to lead the panel discussion. Mr. Benny, please.
Thank you very much for a lovely introduction. A very good morning, everyone. Warm greeting from Jakarta. A good morning to all of you who joining with us from the Southeast Asia region. Well, it's a good evening to colleagues friends who joined with us from the other part of the world. As I understand that we have a lot of participants joining with us from US, particularly our counterpart from the global consortium from the power system transformation. It's a privilege for me to moderate the discussion today, and I mean we have 220 strong participants joining with us, listening to the discussion. So before I start with the panel discussion, I'd like to thank everyone to joining this session. And we have around 1 hour, 1.5 hours for this discussion. And I'm planning to divide it into 3 sections. That's going to be after we just hearing the presentation from Mr. Ding Xuan Dok about the EVN and NLDC experience in handling the fluctuation from the solar energy and the mitigation strategies. And as you can see on your screen, we also have other experts from the 3 others system operators joining with me. So I will start this first session by inviting their first introductory remark, and then their first on experience as well. Then the second session, I will let them to have a question, have a discussion among them, asking each other. But then we will go with free flow Q&A discussion with all of the participants. I know we have so many in the Q&A chat box right now. I will start with the first one from Mr. Elfanto Yanuar Iksan, the System Planning Senior Manager of the Java Madura Bali Load Dispatch Center at the PT PLN or Perusahaan Listrik Negara. That's going to be. We would like to also invite you to give your introductory remarks about the renewable energy landscape in Indonesia, particularly on this VRE planning and then the readiness of the grid infrastructures in address this issue. Pak Elfanto, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Benny, for the opportunity for me to explain the Indonesian plan for the renewable energy. First, I want to appreciate Pak Mr. Ding presentation. It was so many information from Vietnam. Maybe we can get example from the Vietnam to be implemented in Indonesia also. So for the Indonesia, actually we are committed that in 2060, the Indonesia will be the net zero emission country in the world. Yeah. And also we already have a plan to implement variable renewable energy, huge variable renewable energy for the coming years. Yeah, about 3,200 megawatt variable renewable energy will be installed in Jawa Madura Bali system. From that 3,200, it is consists of 290 megawatt of solar PV and 260 megawatt of wind turbine. So how is the readiness of our system to be penetrated by the variable renewable energy? Right now, most of all point interconnection in Jawa Madura Bali substation fulfill the short circuit ratio to allow 100 megawatt peak solar PV. Yeah, and then also we already implement the free governor in Jawa Madura Bali system. About 94% of the power plant in Jamali already participate in free governor program. And also we implement the automatic generation control also in Jamali system. And also in 2024, we will upgrade our control center to become the advanced control center. Yeah. It basically digitalize some of process such as the energy management system, short-term load forecast, yeah, integration GROS with the SCADA, also weather monitoring system, and then also the AGC and free governor control, yeah, from the master session. And then in the next decade, next 10 years, yeah, we will have the hydro pump storage, yeah, around 3,700 megawatt. Yeah. So we hope that this pump storage will also overcome the variability in the because of the variable renewable energy. And then I think that's all. Yeah, our plan for the variable renewable energy in Jamali system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanto. And I mean, that's maybe in larger scale, that's going to be the latest green PDP or RPTL from Indonesia is really set a tone that how the PLN must embark this journey toward the net zero and the challenge that's going to be faced. Now we move to Malaysia. That's going to be, we have Mr. Santmugan Toparan, the head of the grid system operator. I have the same question to you, sir. I mean, to ask for you to brief the renewable energy landscape and the plan in Malaysia, that how, I mean, you are preparing all the things this, from the perspective of the GSO. But the time is yours.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Pak Beni. Thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, I think recently our government Malaysia announced our new policy, energy policy for 2040. We hope to be net zero by then. So basically, where we are now, we actually still comparably to Vietnam. I think they are quite ahead. So we have about 2 gig of solar, and then in terms of fuel mix, is still very low, below 2%. And the other option we have is hydro, which is about 5% at this point of time. But Malaysia is quite confined to hydro and solar because we don't see much potential for wind in this region, in particular in Peninsular Malaysia. So with this in mind, with the conventional fuel mix, especially coal, about 55%, there's a lot of transition need to be done to achieve our target. For short term, we just completed our assessment. For 2025, we hope to bring our solar capacity to 6 gig. This is without any support. We have made assessment of our grid with existing infra. We are ready for about 6 gig. That will take us about 36% penetration on a weekday and about 46% penetration on the Sunday and a holiday. And beyond that, we are taking the opportunity also to work on a flex resources, storages, so that we can move beyond 6 gig and possibly towards 8 and 10 gig by 2030 or 2040. That's where we are in terms of aspirations. Meantime, we're also developing some hydro power plants, but the energy content is quite low. So this is where we are looking at possibilities of later, maybe we discuss in detail, how do we link up among the region countries, where we can share the renewable resources and push further collectively as the ASEAN spirit. But the context of today's discussion, we're very well aware when we increase IBR in the grid, it poses a challenge. It poses a big challenge in terms of like we discussed for level, initial, and so on and so forth. But we have time to prepare ourselves and do the necessary, because it's not an option in our context, especially Malaysia. We are building our resources and technologies to prepare ourselves for this high level of penetration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be we have the time, but then we also need to utilize the time to prepare ourselves to embrace this journey. Thank you very much for sharing from the perspective of GSO. And we also have Mr. Luke Robinson, the Group Manager, Modeling and Engineering, Operation Department from the Australian Energy Market Operator. AMO itself is also part of the Global Consortium for Power System Transformation. Thank you very much for joining with us today. So, I mean, Mr. Luke, you're here in Indonesia, you have Vietnam, you're here in Indonesia, you're here from Malaysia. That's going to be about the challenge they are experiencing today, and then they are expected in the future. So, is it the same thing that you also experience in Australia right now, or I mean, is there anything that you already experienced that these three countries not experienced yet, and then you want to put a word on that? Mr. Luke, the time is yours.
Thanks, Benny. And firstly, Sawadee-krap, Selamat Pagi, and Xin Chao. Hopefully, my pronunciation is reasonable. I have actually visited each of your countries, and really great to be here today to share and reflect on some of our experiences. I mean, certainly, you know, power systems, AC power systems are governed by the same laws of physics, and globally there's a massive shift to decarbonize our electricity system. So I think a lot of the challenges really resonated, with us here in the national electricity market and the Western electricity market in the southwest part of WA as well, where AEMO operate those electricity systems. I'll focus on the East Coast system in particular, which is very sparsely interconnected system with a demand that varies from around about a little under 15 gigawatts up to a peak of 35 gigawatts and spans some 5,000 kilometres across the East Coast. So certainly the challenges that I've heard about from the other speakers and panelists so far around system strength, particularly where a lot of the renewable resources are connecting in parts of the system which are remote from the load centres or remote from the existing sources of generation. The stability and how they integrate, how we utilise the assets, how we utilise protection schemes to help manage stability and contingency events are all very familiar to us. Certainly in terms of the East Coast, the NEM context as well, we're seeing a massive uptake in renewable generation and wind and solar in particular has a capacity now of 16 gigawatts. And we're expecting a 9-fold increase by 2050, which is just massive. And on top of that, I'd say we're really world leading, and particularly in regions of the NEM, including South Australia, where we have a huge amount of distributed photovoltaic generation, presently 15 gigawatts, which is also quite massive when you compare that to our peak demand of around 35 gigawatts. So I think, also as touched on by the other panelists, increasing the capacity to share that energy across the system is just really vital in terms of maximizing the resource potential. To be able to have dispatchable capacity to meet load is certainly a challenge that we're facing to ensure that we've got the firmed renewables, the storage, we've got the ability to transfer that power, to forecast, to control and have visibility of the system in terms of phase and measurement units, which were touched on as well. I suppose there's some of the key things, and certainly, happy to touch a little more on some of the power system modelling aspects and how that's evolved over time as we get into a bit more detail in the conversation, but certainly a lot of key themes that resonate with us in Australia.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's very interesting, but there's also a lot of questions that I would like to learn more and how to become this kind of. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Luke, and that's the first part of the discussion where we have each of our speaker panels sharing the current situation in the particular countries. No, I mean, we have a lot of questions actually in the Q&A, but once again, allow me to request your permission that giving the priority to our panel members to ask each other first, because so that they can also learn the experience from each countries. So I just go with the circle that maybe I start with inviting Mr. Elfanto. If you have also have a question to address, perhaps particularly to Mr. Deans in the context of the EVN, as you mentioned before, a lot of things that Indonesia can learn from the EVN experience.
Right. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of examples from the Vietnam that can be implemented in Indonesia also. Yeah, especially implementing the huge or massive solar PV in Vietnam. Yeah. Also, maybe we want to ask Mr. Dean, what is the transition step, from the conventional power system into the modernized right now, that penetrated by so many solar PV into your system. What is the transition step? So you can be right now like this. Maybe that's I want to ask to Mr. Dean about the transition step.
Thank you, Pak Elfanto. Mr. Dean, can we have your response on the question from Mr. Elfanto? So what is the transition step for in EVN implementing this massive solar power from the conventional into the variable renewable energy?
Yeah, many thanks for Mr. Elfanto about this question. Let me share the screen. Just wait a minute. is what exactly I think that we can address fully your question. Yeah, you can see it.
Yes, yeah, we can see it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we can see it clearly.
yeah. In fact, we have already conducted the technical assistance from the international consultant, and the final result we got up to now is what exactly the 14 solution to deal with the high penetration from the renewable energy. It also part of the way we transition to the zero carbon. And based on this paragraph, the image, we can see that on the vertical axis, it is depend on the market evolution. It depend on the infrastructure you invest into the power system. And for the horizons axis, is based on the ratio of the renewable energy we expected to absorb. So based on that, we can prioritize what is the first solution and what is the next solution. So the red one is what exactly is quite urgent for us to absorb almost 10% of the renewable energy. And for higher penetration of renewable energy, we have to rely on the yellow and the green. In fact, up to now, we already addressed all the red one. It is what exactly in terms of from the planning, from the real-time operation, for the grid code reinforced, and we also build up the renewable control center, the sizing of the reserve, as I mentioned in the previous slide, and also including the renewable energy forecasting. So what exactly the red one we have already fully addressed. And the next one, we will address further about the storage with the presence of the battery storage will become very soon. And we also speed up the cross-border interconnection with the neighboring country, like China. We also have planned to maintain the back-to-back connection for Laos and also for the Cambodia. We foreseen the picture of the interconnection among the neighboring country, so we can enhance the flexibility of the whole power system when we keep interconnect. And we also need to address further about the ancillary service in nature. I mean, we can offer the financial incentive sufficient for the service provider to make sure that we can deal with the intermittent of the renewable energy. And the other solution can be ranking for a high horizon, like a voltage control strategy, like a optimal power flow and automatic voltage regulation. Yeah, that's the whole picture, the roadmap. We ready for the transition to the higher penetration of renewable energy. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dean. I think it is very worth for us, the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dean, and happy to hear that address your concern, Alfonso. And I mean, I'm still putting Mr. Dean in the spotlight. I'd like to invite Mr. Samugan if you have also a question to Mr. Dean, please.
Yes, quite interesting decks. From the deck, I was thinking, I noticed that your wind and solar capacity ranging between 26 to 30% from now until 2030. But the mix of flex resources that you highlight is I'm only seeing it in 2045. So what's the plan or EVN to manage from now till the flex resources come online? You shared just now some of the action plan, but again, without flex resources, is it possible to hit up to 2045? Because worldwide is quite a big push to have a storage and all this thing. It's expensive, but so I like to interesting how Vietnam can plan to do it by delaying all the flex resources.
Yeah, you mentioned about the flexible flexibility characteristic of the power system. In fact, based on the master power plan, up to now we got the 8th version, but have not yet approved. We also expected around 9% up to 2045, with the total installed capacity up to 445 gigawatt hour. So it is really the challenge target. And from the EVN perspective, we do not think that we can cover 9% for the whole system. It should be based on the other mechanism to mobilize the resource from the private sector, rather than it is just put this responsibility for EVN itself. So that means we need the regulation, we need the incentive mechanism in terms of the financer to make sure that the other private provider can be happy to invest into the flexible and can gain the sufficient benefit on that. It is that's the EVN the point of view. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. I can't agree more.
Thank you. Thank you both. Mr. Luke, if you have also a question you would like to address to Mr. Dean.
Myself?
Yeah, I mean, any question if you have, you'd like to ask Mr. Dean before we let Mr. Dean to ask the others.
Sure, thanks. Look, really keen just to know, where you're seeing the renewables connect in your system, relative to the bulk transmission system, the load centers, the existing sources of generation. Is that impacting how you operate the system, and particularly interested to hear any sort of impacts you're experiencing around managing outages or any events on the system where you might need to operate the system differently with the higher levels of solar generation that you're seeing in the Vietnam system.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Can you respond to it?
Yeah, I got it. In fact, from the EVN side, we also learn some similar experience from the neighboring country. Like as I mentioned before, up to now we very keen on to cooperate with a TNB. We learn a lot of the experience from the TNB for the voltage control automatically in the online environment. This topic become more significantly with the high penetration of the renewable energy. As you know, from the EVN's perspective now, we still suffering the reactive power lacking, especially in the hot day or in the dry season. We still lacking. Even trying to put a lot of the financial effort to invest into the capacity to push it up the reactive power reserve, but still cannot suffering meet the demand. In this context, we also see the high potential from the renewable energy. They can provide the reactive power quite flexible. But what is the mechanism? We got the incentive for each individual power plant to provide such kind of the service. That's still lacking now. And based on the solution from the TNB, we do hope that we can learn and we can deploy for the Vietnamese power system by optimizing the whole power flow. In this context, we can rely on the megawatt reactive power service to provide our system and to get the final optimal result and relax the high demand of the capacity investment for EVN itself. Yeah, that's just some similar point. And the other thing that we think that we share the common point of view rather than is a different among the country. But we need further cooperation in the future with the support from the G-PST. We do hope that we can learn more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and it's very exciting when Mr. Dean mentioned about learning from each others to address this unique but common issue that we are experiencing. And I think it's just recall what Karen Wetzak, the G-PST Secretary Director, mentioned earlier in the opening, that the G-PST, the consortium, is to perform the community of practice to the system operators in the ASEAN region and to coordinate this regional knowledge sharing. So, I mean, we're happy to continue to support this so that we can learn it others. No, I mean, Mr. Dean, that's gonna be, I know I put you in the spotlight, but no, if you want to also ask the others expert from we have from Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. So, Mr. Dean, if you have any question to any of them.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we really expected about the G-PST cooperation mechanism. So through this forum, we can share what exactly we got so far and what is the next step we can discuss. So I have the question to Mr. Evanto, also the contribution from Mr. Samugam, right?
Yeah.
So does PLN and GSO have any preparation on the control and the monitoring system to support the integration of the renewable energy up to now?
I would like to answer that, Mr. Dean. Yeah.
So,
yes, right now we already prepare for massive penetration for the variable renewable energy. Yeah. Actually, the program seems, I think, more or less like your program before, yeah, the roadmap. Yeah. The first one is we activating the free governor and AGC. Yeah. Right now, about 94% of the power plant in Jamali system already implementing the free governor program. And then also we want to implement the automatic weather station. So we install weather station in all substations, so it can input the information about the weather across the region. And then also we also implement the fast response governor monitoring system, also inertia monitoring system, and also we want to upgrade our master station to be the advanced control center in 2024. And also right now we also implement the intraday planning. Yeah, before the planning only 1 day ahead, 1 day before. And right now in the real time also we have the intraday planning. And then also we already fixed the withdrawal phenomena in the steam turbine. So there are withdrawal phenomena in our steam turbine power plant that when the frequency below or frequency decrease, yeah, sometimes the power from the steam turbine is withdrawal. But right now we already overcome that. Maybe that's some of the program that already implemented in Jamali system study.
Thank you, Pak Elvanto. Pak Samugan, you would also like to add?
Yeah, I think we all think alike. I think all system operators. I think the chart that showed by Mr. Ding just now is very familiar. We have also planned and implemented all our solar forecasting. We use machine learning. So far, so good. We can get up to single-digit accuracy, but of course, the capacity is still small. And then we have a benefit of the geographical. So we have a good aggregated cross-balancing among the facilities. So we see the net intermittency in the grid is much reduced. So we're also working on the intermittency index. And then we have implemented, like Mr. Ding, all of our penetration is about 50% of solar happens at distribution and 50% at the grid. So, but all the grid facility, we are trying to mimic as much as possible of the solar facilities as a conventional. They're fully supportive of the reactive resources, and also to a certain level, high frequency response. And they are also future ready for low frequency response as well. So all these are automated, and based on Vietnam experience, invariably along the way, the planning might not be so perfect. So in between, we're sure bound to have some curtailment. So all of them are future ready for curtailment, can remotely be done. But of course, we do target a very minimal curtailment. I think it's good to accept that a small curtailment is good. After all, below 2% is something we should accept. It helps the grid as well. The bigger concern here is based on the profile and centric of solar is how we manage the coal flexibility and the gas flexibility. It's a big component in our system, coal. And traditionally, they never move. It's kind of fixed plan. And I noticed one thing, not only Malaysia, but I think the regional plant up that I see in the recent years is all are shifting towards the single shaft, big machines, 700 megawatt. So I think we all are sharing the same technology. And based on what Mr. Ding shared, the number of cycles, shutdowns is going to increasing. What we are preparing now is how do we improvise the robustness and reliability of this conventional, the single shaft and the coal, so that we can secure the grid. Whatever said and done, finally, the conventional is the one fully important for the security of the grid. They're the firm capacity, fully dispatchable. So that's what we're working on. And in the very high detailed aspect of our system, we are working on the WAMs. We already have some applications running. But most interestingly, what we are preparing ourselves towards the next 3 years is how to work on a wide area protection and control. I think we are fully integrated at 500 kV. All of our stations are large and they are quite concentrated in few locations. So we anticipate high power transfer shifting between the renewable hours and non-renewable hours. So we need to secure the grid with this kind of technology. That's a very quick remedial action as a defense scheme beyond the conventional under frequency, under voltage. We are working on that. But we fully agree, like what Mr. Ding, we cannot fully rely on the grid resources. So this is where we are increasing our visibility and connectivity to with the DSOs, distribution system operators. How do we leverage on assets at the distribution? The distribution energy resources is going to grow, and I think it's important that we leverage on them. So we are increasing the connectivity and also the visibility. Hopefully in the future, they also can provide a reasonable amount of grid support to operate the grid. We are doing that. And then we also working on some elements that can support like pump storage and battery storage within the next 5 years and so. We're also working in demand response. So these are the pilots that we are working on, demand response. And so far we're doing it with a few customers, and we are also looking at how aggregator can play a role. So these are some of the things that we are doing to prepare the grid. Most important, I think one element that I saw in the slide is the fault right through. I think it's important that, like I want to mention, the AGC, all this, the behind the scene kind of fault right through capabilities of all the IBRs is very important. So we are also working on a grid code. Similarly, our counterpart also working on the distribution code, where we want these settings to be fully localized and full, and the compliance level is very high. So these are something take time to do. So if you start now, hopefully the codes and regulatory regulations will be enforced and fully complied by all users. So this is the plan for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
In fact, I totally agree with my two colleagues about the role of the interconnection among the regional country. So we can share the transition point and also address fully about the weak point from neighboring country in the supporting mechanism. Yeah, I totally agree on that. Thanks.
So thank you. And then as Mr. Sambungan may say, it has to start now, right? And then we need to work on that together. It's gonna be, I mean, we have more than 30 question in the Q&A box. So allow me to now jump to this question. Now, I will try to go one by one. There is no specific mention to who the question is being addressed, so I'm just trying to align it. It's gonna be I start with the first one. That's gonna be maybe it's I mean it could be addressed to Mr. Dean, but other experts also can also join to respond. Have you thought of having storage as part of the energy source to mitigate the renewable energy intermittency matters? Yeah, I know that's Mr. Dean mentioned in the chart before where the energy storage is playing the role. But Mr. Dean, if you have additional comment to respond to that question.
There's no doubt that storage, especially for the battery, with the perfect performance, we can mitigate the intermittent renewable energy. And now for the event case, we prefer to use the battery for the very dedicated application. Is mainly frequency control. We can use the fast response from the battery, and we use the battery for the energy storage to mimic the curtailment. It is too expected. We can eager on the battery in the future.
Thank you. Just
sorry, Benny, but I'd jump in with a couple of comments as well.
Yes, sure, please.
Certainly, we're seeing storage as one of the key parts of the equation of operating grids to 100% renewables in future. And right now we have around 2 gigawatts of storage, and we're forecasting that to increase by a factor of 30, and that's covering batteries, virtual power plants, and pumped hydro storage. So increasing to 2050 up to about 60 gigawatts. And that's really important to have that firm renewables to manage the variability. And also, as we've touched on in some of the other panels as well, the interconnection to be able to share the renewable resources across the power system. So really vital part of the transition.
Right. Thank you. That's going to be highlighted. It's really about the power of this. So it's playing a very significant role in this part. So other speakers, feel free to jump if you have additional comment. I will go with the next question. So what is quantum of the LSS or wind is considered in the dispatch to make sure that the capability of the mitigation during this intermittency? Maybe I go again, sorry, to Mr. Dean. What is the quantum of the large-scale solar or wind is considered in dispatch to make sure that the capability of mitigation during the intermittency?
Sorry, about the storage, right? I missed.
So what is the size of the LSS large scale solar or wind is considered in the dispatch to make sure that the capability of mitigation during the intermittency? There's kind of limit that we should look or that's considered to mitigate this intermittency issue for the both of solar and wind context?
In fact, for the renewable energy curtailment now, we rely on the EMS. It's exactly the ACC to fully control in the real time to make sure that we cannot exceed the maximum capacity of the transmission line. And up to now, the ratio for the curtailment can be kept around just 5 or up to 7% in terms of the energy. And in the future, with the new investment in the transmission line, it's quite traditional. In the next 2 or 3 years, we can minimize the renewable energy curtailment, and do hope that after 2025 we can freely evacuate all the power from the renewable energy, and we also foreseen the presence of the storage. So in the case we have a large portfolio of the storage, we have to take into account the other question about the optimize the whole power system operation with the support from the battery is also another challenges in terms of the economical point of view. Yeah, just from EVN point of view.
Thank you. Pak Alvanto, if you have something to add, the other speakers also.
Yeah, I think also the battery storage system is one of the important device that maybe in the future it can help the efficiency in our system. Yeah. So it is one of the consideration for us that in the future we will maybe install huge amount of battery storage also in our system, and also combine with the pump storage hydro. Yeah. I think that's one of the solutions to overcome the intermittency in the future.
Thank you.
There's a fair bit, to unpack. It's a really good question, and really, I think addressed through a range of areas, in terms of having, a forecast and an accurate forecast, and being able to actually evaluate the uncertainty in that forecast is kind of critical for our dispatch systems to manage supply and demand. Understanding how contingencies sizes are impacted by having wind and solar connected on radial circuits or via special protection schemes that might operate to disconnect a number of plant is obviously critical as well, and that feeds into how we operate our dispatch engine and constraints on the system, how we forecast ramping events, which are increasingly important in terms of managing that balance of flows across the system. And then I guess the fourth one, just in the context of extreme weather events, it's important to understand the risk associated with not just single element outages, but multiple contingency events or non-credible contingency events that could take out a number of facilities, and how we manage that operationally to ensure that we're getting the right balance between, utilizing the assets, but mitigating the risk so that we're not having cascading failures that ultimately disrupt customers.
Right, that's the thing that we don't want to be. Yeah. Right. Okay. And then I continue the two questions that I combined it. So, what algorithm is used to determine the critical system inertia threshold at any given period or time, and how is the system inertia measured in the real time? So, any of our experts would like to respond to this two questions?
I think for Jamali system right now, we only monitor the inertia system, not automatically control from the monitor parameter into the control directly, but it only monitor and then action taken by the dispatcher to take control if the inertia system is very low, for instance. For us, it's still like that, not fully controlled.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Alvanto. Is it same experience in Malaysia, Pak Samugan?
So inertia is still very strong, and I think it's not a concern at this point. I think tied back to the first question earlier is going forward, we have to translate the totality of the variability and the level of minimum conventional dispatch is required to keep the required level of inertia. And alternatively, we think if you just purely go for conventional solution plan, it can be a costly affair. So I think having the right the forecast together with the right level of flex resources, we can optimize the requirement of inertia. And the most important, I think, is we all commonly will agree eventually is that once we are interconnected, we are to a certain level are solving the inertia issues. And also we are going to cross leverage the intermittency, and I think that could be eventually an optimized solution as ASEAN grid overall.
Thank you. Luke or Mr. Dean, you have any additional thought on that?
There's probably a few people from AMO on the call that are more expert in this area than I, but certainly, we undertake a range of planning studies to look at the limits on the power system and the combinations of synchronous generators that are needed to manage, meet inertia requirements, manage potential rates of change of frequency, which in the NEM and the WEM, we can see 1, 2, 3 hertz per second type rock-offs, so quite high as we are running relatively light systems compared to in the past. one thing that, is a really important outcome of that is just how our under frequency load shedding operates. Does it operate fast enough to arrest under frequency events when they occur? And so inertia is really a vital quantity that we need to pay attention to. We are embarking on a trial with reactive technologies to have some additional online monitoring of inertia in future as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pak Ben, it's interesting. I think we are also coming across, like I mentioned earlier, the new design machines. The level of robustness for rock-off is somehow kind of limited. And I think because they are designed for big systems. So I think our grid is robust enough for N-1. Our concern is we have multiple contingencies at the same time. How do we protect our grid from beyond 1 Hz per second situation? I think that is one challenge we also quite worry about. How do we manage this in the future? That is why I think the wide area protection and control is an important aspect again. How do we manage the defense scheme from conventional under frequency?
Right. Thank you, Pa. And I think somehow it's connected with the next question. I mean, it's going to be what do you do? What do you do for the grid congestion problem? I mean, because it's asking, do you need to do the curtailment, and then is there a penalty on this? I mean, the question is addressed to Mr. Dean in the context of EVN. I mean, on this penalty issue when the things happen. But if others expert can also respond. But I start with Mr. Dean first. Going to be is there a penalty when the thing is not working as expected, Mr. Dean?
To deal with the grid congestion, as I mentioned, that we just rely on the automatic generation control.
Yeah.
So I think that the big penalty for each individual power plant is what exactly the amount they have to curtail. But in terms of from the regulatory point of view, up to now in the grid code, we have not yet any requirement to claim the penalty for renewable energy power plant. But in the future, we will get involved into the grid reinforced to put a lot of the responsibility to make sure that if each individual power plant cannot maintain the minimum forecasting error, they have to pay for that, because it is really the burden we have to pay for the ancillary service provider. We need to trade off.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I thought we had answered a lot of questions, but I see the numbers still remain the same. We have more questions coming up. Then I go with the next one. Is there the requirement for the secondary frequency response reserve due to this intermittency of renewable on top of the reserve requirement for the largest generation units? Is this kind of requirement, mandatory thing? That's any expert would like to take on that question from your experience?
Maybe I can start. Yes, definitely, because the contingency reserve is only X for contingency, but with the high level of intermittency, the secondary reserve become more important now than before. It has to cover the regulation, the intermittency, and the ramping up kind of situation. So quite interesting from Mr. Ding's slide, right? I see quite obviously he increasing the secondary reserve from 900 to 1,700.
Yeah.
Maybe I also like to Mr. Ding to comment. How do we strategize this increase, and is it cost effective? And how do you manage that increase on the secondary reserve?
The amount we arrange for the secondary frequency reserve is based on the calculation on paper. In fact, in the real time up to now, we just arrange the certain amount around 700 just to deal with the contingency of the biggest generations losses, and have not yet taken into account the in parallel the occurrence of the intermittent from the renewable energy. So in the case we take into account this factor, the reserve for the secondary will increase nearly double. So it's quite costly for the conventional. and especially for the flexibility generation in the future as well.
Thank you. I go again. It's with the next question. I think we can combine this question, asking what will be the recommended maximum VRE penetration level to ensure the frequency fluctuation is within acceptable limits. So we have a number of questions asking. I mean, now 1, 2, 3, 4 question is asking if there is any maximum limit for the VRE penetration that can be absorbed without an issue. Maybe I can invite each of you to give your own experience on that.
As a system operator, we definitely need to set a limit.
Okay.
Maybe the planner may think otherwise, but as a real-time operators, there is a technical limit. We believe, I'm maybe conventional. There's definitely a technical limit. I think that assessment is highly important because if you don't set the limit, that means somebody else is taking the burden. It's either the conventional or we are putting the system at risk. So for now, Malaysia is kind of set the limit for now based on our assessment up to 2030 that we can safely go up to 50% on the weekend and about 35% on the weekday. This is without flex resources. Yeah. But I like Mr. Luke to comment. I saw his latest AMO plan ISP. It is really very, very high kind of limit. Yeah. So
okay.
So I think every country have their perception to this number.
No, thanks, and happy to offer a few comments. I mean, right now for the West Coast system, we've operated at over 80% renewable penetration, and on the East Coast, close to 70%. So quite significant. Really, the main constraints are around how do we ensure we've got the required services and stability from the rest of the generation fleet. And right now that's typically synchronous generators, so coal and gas generators and hydro for that matter. Really managing frequency is dependent upon how much control you have, both the local control, and we've gone through a process of rolling out primary frequency response to improve the frequency control in the NEM. And that applies to both wind, solar and synchronous machines, but then also, as others have touched on earlier, having appropriately tuned automatic generator control, as well as the fast, slow and delayed frequency ancillary services markets, which are actually co-optimized with the energy market in the NEM. So all these things are really important to maintain frequency within the necessary limits, and managing frequency is, I think, going to change as we move toward having more and more inverter-based resources, and for AMO rolling out a 1 second ancillary service market in the not too distant future as well. So a very important area.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Dean or Pak Alfanto, you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I'm agree with the other, with Pak Samugam, Pak Dean, and Pak Luke about the primary frequency control is the first defense for the intermittency, I think, and then after that is secondary frequency control. Then after that, if you want to add more renewable energy, maybe we have to have a good forecast system, to overcome to forecast the intermittency in the next hour, for instance. I think if we have that means that equipment, I think more variable energy can penetrate to our system.
Thank you very much. So I think I go with the next question that we have to Mr. Dean. I mean, it's going to be so we have a question saying that so he quoted the annual report that mentioned that aggregation of the several PV farm will smooth out the PV output. So he's asking in the context of Vietnam, Mr. Dean, that do you also have a similar case? Request you to explain your experience with quite a big solar PV capacity in Vietnam. And he also asking whether some PV farm output curve, also aggregated PV output curve that can be shown or explained.
For the PV, the solar rooftop in Vietnam is up to now is really the big number for our experience. And in fact, now we have still lacking the infrastructure to fully monitoring and control the PV. And for every fluctuation due to the intermittent of the solar in nature, we really suffering a lot of the issue. As you can see, the number of the start and stop is also part of the result from the PV penetration. And now we also do some pilot project to research on the dome system. And through a dome system, we will elaborate more what the exactly contribution from the PV rooftop can support the system, like the reactive power. And based on the result of the pilot project, we can be confident to say that if we have a suffering incentive and mechanism, we can make use of the PV rooftop as an active participation in our system. So I in favor of the positive analysis and recognition of the PV rooftop in our system up to now.
I echo it. I mean, I have a solar rooftop, 2.7 kilowatt hours on my at my home, and then I hope I don't trouble much to PLN system on this installment. But I want to just have your comment as well on that point. But
yeah, it is. I think the same with Mr. Dean. It is difficult for us to control the PV rooftop because we cannot control the customer that install the PV rooftop in their homes, for instance. But actually, usually PV rooftop installed in the lower voltage, right, in the customer voltage. Yeah, usually in Indonesia into 220 volt. So we hope that PV rooftop will be absorbed only in distribution, not until injecting to the high level voltage. So if we can maintain like that, maybe we can maintain the stability of our system. Maybe that's my thought about the PV rooftop.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Alberto. Again, I apologize that if my solar rooftop at home is causing the trouble at your end.
I think Pak Benny must pay some ancillary service costs.
I have at my home. Pak Sanmugan, we have a question for you that's gonna be. He's asking. I mean, he'd like to thanks for your information as well on the challenge about RE development in Malaysia, particularly in the limited source of RE. So he's asking about how do you think if Malaysia collaborate with Indonesia by installing RE plant and the capital will be paid off joining the income from the carbon trading. I mean, this is kind of off track of discussion, but Pak Sanmugan, if you have a comment on that.
Interesting. I think it's quite timely, the question, but I'm not sure whether it's answered exactly. But just last week, November 7th, our regulator have announced a program called Virtual PPA, where a developer can pay for the solar facilities and then have a counterpart in the off-taker to share on the carbon credit, and then they can kind of have a virtual PPA among them. And then the transaction will go through the grid, no doubt, but they can have some bilateral contract. So there's a VPPA program announced just 2 weeks ago, and I think it's open up to 600 megawatt capacity is available. Yeah, I think maybe it can make some close relevance to the intent, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. And as you highlighting about the virtual PP, that's going to be Mr. Lu. We also have a question asking on your experience. What you do with the virtual PP in the context of the Australia? I mean, then how you handle local PSS storage and client sites which install PV, and how does it might trigger the grid defection?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, Benny?
Yeah, we have the question also for you. That's what to do with the virtual power plant in your context with it, and how you handle. It's asking how you handle waste storage on the client sides with the installed PV, and then how it might trigger grid defection.
Right, a few questions in there.
Yes.
Look, we've got a couple of real world-leading trials at the moment to see how virtual power plants can operate effectively and really provide services back to the broader system. So there's one called Project Edge on the East Coast and Project Symphony on the West Coast, and certainly encourage people to take a look at that. You know, obviously, there's a lot of opportunities with battery systems as well, and you know, even the Hornsdale Power Reserve in South Australia really demonstrated the ability to provide both energy but also ancillary services, so to respond in ways during high impact, low probability events on the system, to respond to help restore the system. I think there was a question in there as well around grid defection. I suppose AEMO as system operator isn't, you know, as close to the end customers. I mean, we hear about that from time to time, about the potential for people to go off grid, and certainly in areas which are quite remote, particularly in the West Australian system where they're quite remote from the main grid. There's a number of remote islanded systems that have been set up. Instead of replacing 50 kilometers of single wire earth return line when there's a fault or a fire or what have you, they're being replaced with, you know, in the right locations, they're being replaced with a combination of solar, battery, and other resources. So I think watch this space. I mean, I think, you know, what we're seeing more than anything is that as these battery systems start to connect, it hopefully will present opportunities for us in terms of utilizing additional resources where they remain connected to the grid, but can provide services back and still have the reliability of the power system for when they need power and the battery's not charged or solar not operating.
Thank you. You know, it's still have so many questions. Like, so thanks everyone for posting your question. I'm trying to go back line by line, and then maybe I just combine these two questions that to anyone expert would like to respond. How challenging it is in shaping the demand to match the fluctuative supply? And I think I combine this question with if there's any tool that you guys use to manage operation planning when it comes to managing stochasticity of renewable energy. We have two questions, but then it's somehow it will be combined, and anyone would like to take a response on that?
I have some idea on that.
Yes, please, Mr. Lin.
With the presence of the high penetration from the renewable energy, from the operation planning, we also need to change the approach. Especially in the previously, we have a planning based on the deterministic scenario. So now we have to switch to the probabilistic approach to deal with the intermittent of the renewable energy. What is the key issue now? We are get involved in this process to make sure that all the scenario, all the uncertainty can be addressed and give the sufficient warning from the planning perspective. Yeah, just some experience from the EVN side.
Okay, thank you. Any other expert like to add or respond on that from your experience?
I also have some idea for that, yeah, for how to match the demand and supply for the variable renewable energy power system. Yeah. In the past, yeah, we only forecast the demand, but in the future, when the variable renewable energy already penetrate our system, I think also we have to forecast the demand, also forecast the supply. Yeah. especially for the weather. So if we can forecast the weather accurately, I think we can match the demand and supply closely, yeah. And also maybe like Pak Din said that we use the probabilistic algorithm, yeah, to forecast the demand and supply, and also maybe we can implement some artificial intelligence, so it can learn, yeah, how we can match the demand and supply, yeah, in certain time, yeah, in certain, I think that in February, March until December, it has a different pattern of the demand and supply. Maybe that's my idea.
Just a few things to add, just in terms of, the importance of forecasting in the context of, high wind, high solar. From our experience, certainly having good hub height weather observations is really important, and multiple wind speed and wind power forecasts, ensuring that we've got adequate or comprehensive SCADA signals from the renewable sites to feed into our energy conversion models to support those forecasts. And a few other things that, over time we've become aware of, say, extreme high temperature cutout, or high temperature cutout, or extreme wind temperature cutout, and how we factor those into our forecasts as well, particularly during some of those conditions where the grid might be under a bit of stress. It's really important to understand the potential to lose a number of wind farms or have them derate in a not too dissimilar manner to how a gas turbine would derate due to high temperature. And then really just understanding that variability and uncertainty is just critical as well, so that we can match supply and demand. And we have a range of forecast horizons that we use operationally, as well as longer term in terms of our forecasts, to ensure that we've got the capacity, or providing the signal, I should say, providing the signals to the market so that we hopefully have the capacity needed to operate the system.
Okay. I think with the generation being variable, I think going forward we should have some segment of demand. Also, we have a certain level of control, so we can control both ends. One segment definitely is growing. I think internationally is the charging segment, mobility. I think it's important if we can plan that connectivity of all EV charging and the rapid charging, and then we can manage the time of charge, and also the demand itself become a level of control. They can remotely. So I think that demand segment of EV is important for us to factor into our operation going forward. So they should provide the balancing for both sides.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. But both sides is very crucial. I go with the Mr. Din, the question that we have. Mr. Din, with Vietnam is tremendous example for the region. 2020 is a massive record of solar growing, the wind. So how does EVN handle the complaint from the power plant owner with the increasing start-stop operation, and then has implication to the increased cost of OPEC? So this is a question, Mr. Din, and then maybe there's a question from me there. Are you having a good sleep enough during this, when the 2020 that Vietnam are having more than 10 gigawatts of PRE is coming on board? Mr. Din, to respond on that.
It's really hard for myself to answer this question, because I just got the dispatching perspective. It's not representative for the whole EVN. But in fact, we got a lot of the complaint from the conventional power plant about the large number of the start and stop. So it's really costly and affect a lot on the the reliability of the generating unit. So up to now, we just try to elaborate more what is the real situation for the whole system facing now, and try to convince the conventional power plant that it is the obstacle in nature, and we from national dispatch engine, we try to put a lot of the requirement on the ancillary service in the future and offer the conventional power plant the way to invest or to enhance the current infrastructure to offer the better ancillary service in the future. Based on that, they can get a certain amount of the revenue from the market, rather than just purely complain the problem in nature. And we cannot avoid it. It is a tendency, right? It is a tendency. Yeah, just some solution in the short term.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm assuming you still have a good sleep during that time, or that's a challenging time for you, for system operator to handle it. I checked the Q&A box again. I share to you that when we start the discussion, we have 30 questions, and now it's still 30 questions remaining, despite of all the things that we have discussed. Unfortunately, we will not able to respond all at this point, but I will try to work with all of these experts and then get all the questions to be responded. So allow me to move to our last section of this discussion, where to further explore the idea from all of the speaker here on surrounding the recommendation and topic that we can do more, means to exchange this thing, and then what we can do, meaning that through the global consortium on the power system operator, because as mentioned earlier, this global consortium is to perform the quantity of practice to the system operators here in the ASEAN levels, being led by ACE, and then but it's also in the global context where we have a number of experts to support this knowledge sharing network. So I mean, in this last section that I would like to get an input from each, what are some technical areas that we through the G-PST could collaborate with,
I'm getting a fair bit of background noise from someone. It's much better, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so in this last section that I would like to ask each of you to what is some technical area that G-PST could collaborate to support the work of the system operators in this region. Maybe I will start with Pak Elvanto first, if you okay, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Pak Benny. Yeah, I think a lot of things that can be shared or can be helped by G-PST to Indonesian power system. Yeah. For instance, the renewable and variable renewable technology. Yeah. Right now, we focus only solar PV or wind turbine. But Indonesia right now, we have long coastline. So maybe in the future also we can get advantage from that, and like the wave power plant, for instance, yeah, or from other thing that can be advantage from that situation. So I think also the geothermal, yeah. Indonesia have I think a lot of geothermal potential in Indonesia because we have a lot of volcano in Sumatra and Java. And also maybe we would like that maybe G-PST can share to us about the various inverter technology, yeah, because right now inverter become important, yeah, to maintain the stability of our system. Also, we want to know about the BSS, yeah, but battery storage system, yeah, and also maybe another technology of storage system, yeah, that can be implemented in Indonesia or another country in ASEAN. Also, we want to know about how we can ensure, yeah, the stability, yeah, during the VRE penetration, yeah, especially for huge amount of VRE penetration to the system. How can we ensure that it will be stable? And the last is maybe about the WAMS, yeah, wide area monitoring system, and also WAMPAC, yeah, like Pak San Mugam, yeah, We also already implement the one system in Jauh Madura Bali, but I think in the future, it will be very useful for us for maintain our system. They have to be in a stable condition, especially when the forever renewable energy entering our system. Maybe that is the area that we want to be shared by the G-PST to us.
Thank you, Pak Alvanto. And then just additional note, I thought you also already know that G-PST and the PLN signed a memorandum of understanding about to support this work recently at the COP27. So we look forward to working, collaborate more on with the PLN in this context. Pak Sanugan, if we can also have your view in this context, and Pak Alvanto also have a specific asking a question or request for you and Pak, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think just clarified that G-PST have any engagement with in Malaysia so far. So I think it's good to start. Good to start. I'm looking forward to tap the skill and the experience that such a broad set of resources that G-PST have within the working group. And I think there's a lot to learn and a lot to leverage. And it's one area that we are really just learning a very early stage is of course impact. And the other aspect, I think that's also in the chat box talking about the mention of BSS and how do we intend to use in Malaysian context. Obviously, at the surface is on solar firming. We need to shift the solar towards the night peak and make it dispatchable. That's definitely the fundamental. But the second layer of application, frequency, voltage stability, reactive support, all that, it is something that eventually we must leverage on the BSS to provide this kind of ancillary support as well. And especially during the non-solar hours. This is where we have to rely on the BSS. This is an element that we think that G-PST can help us. How do you find details, this functionality and the services that the BSS offer in the grid connected or even the distribution connected as we speak. Actually, my team is in AMO yesterday, try to learn the same aspect of BSS. They're visiting some of the BSS facility this week. And we hope to learn from the application in G-PST as a global and also in specifically in Australia. Looking at your BSS aspiration going forward, like you said, 30 times more than what you have now. Yeah. So that second layer function of BSS is something that we hope that we can share with, learn from G-PST.
Thank you, Pa. And then I think Karin will agree with me. It's going to be in that we will look forward to have more engagement with you. But it's going to be I know you already collaborated with AMO, but with the G-PST itself, where AMO is so part of it. We'll be very happy to take it to the higher levels on our collaboration. Look, I know you raise your hand, but if okay with you, I pass it to Mr. Din first, and then I go back with you later. Mr. Din.
Yeah, from the EVN side, we also thanks to the G-PST consortium cooperation. In fact, we have already gained the realistic achievement is mainly based on the expert meeting and the workshop that have already fully addressed the hot topic for the EVN's interest. It is mainly focused on the voltage control in the runtime, the phone right to parameter setting, and also how we can gain the forecasting error better for the whole system. And the other issue we have already discussed in the G-PST environment, it is specific on the system initial monitoring tool. And through that, we can have some new idea to enhance our existing infrastructure. And in the future, with the support from the G-PST, we think that we still have a lot of work to do, especially to meet the target of the net zero in 2050 from the government. So we recommend some few we can elaborate more. Firstly, we expected that the internship program, we can exchange the knowledge and on-the-job training with the other TSO or SMO in around the world. And the other new technology we also would like to learn, and to deploy in the reality, it is mainly focused on the wide area monitoring, and especially for the protection and control in the wide area, as I mentioned you before. And from the EVN side, we also have a certain step, a certain reason on that, but still had a lot of work to do. And the other infrastructure to support the distributed generation control by invest into the DERM system. So it's quite new for us. So through the G-PST cooperation, we hope that we can gain a lot. And finally, some issue also relate to the grid code reinforcement with the presence of the HVDC 5 or battery need to put a lot of the requirement for the connection and for the operation still ahead. And we do hope that we can learn from the grid code of the other country from around the world. Yeah, it is some point we need to address with the support from the G-PST. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Din. And then, of course, I pass it to Luke to also share your views. And then as we have you as also a technical support for the G-PST. Mr. Luke.
Thanks, Benny, and I'll keep it short, but probably two key takeaways for me around really the value of the G-PST. Certainly, collaborating and sharing our experiences as we transition to meeting our common goal to decarbonize the power system and provide a secure and reliable supply to consumers. And also really just we've seen in Australia, particularly through the work building on the foundational research agenda, the work we're doing with CSIRO as our premier research agency to then engage with local universities, consultants to progress addressing those research questions that are really so important to the industry at large and also to AEMO and operating the system. So that's covered inverter design, the stability tools that we use, control room of the future and how that adapts so that we can operate the future system, how we adapt our planning, our black start capabilities, services that are provided to operate the system, the architecture of the system, including the transmission distribution, sort of the related responsibilities, and then DER, which is a big topic for us in Australia. So probably two key takeaways to share with the group would really be around that joint collaboration as we progress toward higher levels of renewable, and then also really pulling the whole industry together through some of the foundational work of the G-PST.
Okay. Thank you very much. Look, and for that, I'm already a bit over time, but so allow me to end our panel discussion. I would like to thank all of you, Mr. Din, Pak Sanmugan, Luke, and Elvanto for this great discussion. It's a privilege for me to moderate, and then I promise we have a lot of questions remaining, but we should stop here. For that, I will pass back to our moderators. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for all your sharing and inputs, and Mr. Benny for leading this insightful discussion. We will now have Ms. Karen to close this session. Ms. Karen, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was such a fantastic discussion today. And I have to say, this is actually exactly what I was hoping for when we're thinking about having a great technical conversation and really exchanging real world challenges and solutions. And I was also very pleased to see how much audience participation there was with all of the questions that came through. It was great to bring together key experts from these power system operators in the region to talk about the challenges that we've experienced and the solutions and that need for increasing the share of solar and wind as we're decarbonizing the grids and what we need to do in order to meet those demands. I'd just like to say a special thanks to our G-PST team members at the ASEAN Center for Energy for organizing this event. What a great job. And to Mr. Din Chwanduk at EVN NLDC, Mr. Elvanto Yanuar Iksan at PLN, to Mr. Shanmugam Topalan at TNB Grid System Operators, and to Mr. Luke Robinson at AEMO for sharing their experiences and very much for sharing your time today. And the next year, G-PST is excited to be working with the ASEAN Center for Energy and HAPUA to expand this community of practice and to work together across the region on solutions for power system decarbonization. Many thanks to the great audience for the participation, and we're looking forward to seeing you at future G-PST events. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and an excellent weekend. And thank you again very much for your participation today. Back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. With that, we've come to the end of today's session. Once again, I want to thank all of our speakers for taking the time off and doing this, and all of our attendees for coming and joining this session today. There'll be more discussions surrounding variable renewables in the region, so look out for more webinars on this. Lastly, we also have a post-webinar session that is posted in the chat box. To all attendees, we would appreciate it if you could fill out the survey and give us your feedback. That's it from me today. Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.